Hello everybody, welcome back to this channel, to this review, and to this series of James Bond reviews. In this one here, we're going to be talking about GoldenEye, which was released in 1995. For those that are brand new here, I'm Ross, and hello, welcome. For those returning, you know what to expect. This is not going to be any different now. This is going to be me, even though I have a script, just popping it all off at the top of my head. So, hi, and thanks for coming back, and thanks for watching this. GoldenEye. I have been watching this movie non-stop for about 3 weeks now. 4 weeks, actually. I am so scared about filming this review that I didn't even know what to do. I wrote all of my notes down. I sat at the computer like a maniac typing everything out. I sat on my phone at other points typing it out. I've taken notes. I've done kill counts, the shags. I've done the locations. I've done everything I can. And every single time I try and get my thoughts out for this film, I am just frozen, much like Boris at the end of this movie. I am petrified to review this movie because I don't know how to say anything about this film without it being super positive. And that's not a bad thing, but if I could just take all of my emotions and my feelings off my head and just put them into your head, then you would understand how I feel about this movie. Now, GoldenEye, as I said, 1995, very end of the year kind of thing. And this is actually the very first Bond movie that I ever saw at the cinemas, at the theaters. It is the Bond movie that I don't even remember watching it at the cinemas. Like, I know I watched it, but I don't have any memory of my experience in the theater. If that does make any sense. I hope it does. It's one of those films that this is the one that really solidified my love of Bond, but it goes a little bit deeper than that because it was also the video game. Now, everybody knows, if you're a video game fan, you know GoldenEye 64, released for the Nintendo 64. It came out about 1997, I believe, so it was 2 years after the release of this film. And GoldenEye 64 was a phenomenon. That movie, that video game came out and just changed video games forever. And that's not just me saying it because it's a James Bond. It is hands down the truth. This video game was a first-person shooter on a console that was not a Doom clone. It changed first-person shooting as a whole. It inspired so many other first-person shooters. And it proved that first-person shooters could work on a console instead of just being PC only. It pushed the Nintendo 64 to its limits. It introduced gamers all around the world to James Bond, and it did the same for me. Now, as I said, we watched this movie at the cinemas. My mum and my dad took me and my two older brothers. And I remember watching it at the cinemas on a weekend night. And then after that, I remember going to a pizza shop, getting a pizza, and heading home with my parents. So the memory of this movie is there. But it wasn't until the video game GoldenEye 64 that I played that video game. I remember it vividly that my brother purchased GoldenEye 64 on his Nintendo 64. I remember him sitting me down, me playing the very first level of the game, the opening level, which is you heading toward the dam, using a sniper rifle at that point, dropping down and going into the facility level. And those two levels made me a James Bond fan. So from 1997, I was just obsessed. I went out, purchased GoldenEye 64 on VHS, which unfortunately I don't have as part of my collection because I've lost it in the house moves and all my stuff being damaged years and years and years ago. But it was one of those movies that it just holds, well, GoldenEye 64 holds a special place in my heart, but GoldenEye, this movie, holds such a tremendous part in my heart. It's always an amazing experience for me. And it runs a bit deeper than that, because I mentioned in my last review that, or my last two reviews in the Timothy Dalton movies, that I had a friend named Besnick, and he would always come with me when I worked at a bottle shop, and we would set up like a DVD player in the back storeroom, and we would watch, Timothy Dalton, James Bond movies. But GoldenEye was also another one that we would always watch. And he and I would play the video game together, multiplayer deathmatch. I mean, if you knew, that game was just fantastic. So this movie here for me is, it's such a big impact in my life. Now, you have to think that when the previous movie came out, the James Bond previous film came out, which was License to Kill, Timothy Dalton was James Bond. He had been in 2 movies up to that point. That movie came out in 1989, and if everything was going according to plan, in 1991 we would have had Timothy Dalton's 3rd film. But there was a whole bunch of legal issues happening at the moment. I've heard many different things, that the rights to the TV license of the movies was being sold to companies, and Cubby Broccoli was not impressed at all and pressed legal issues, and then more legal issues happened, and then United Artists had legal issues with companies and this and that. There are many better people online that have spoken about it. Seek them out. It is worth finding out what happened. But needless to say, this movie was, or this franchise actually, from 1989 all the way up to this release, was kind of just really stuck down, was really held down by legal issues. So we had this 6-year gap from License to Kill to GoldenEye. And by the time they were ready to start sorting out, all the legal matters had been sorted out, and by the time GoldenEye was actually starting to film, because even though they were having legal issues, Cubby Broccoli was getting scripts written, he was having ideas put out there, and they still had in their mind that Timothy Dalton was going to be back as James Bond. But Timothy Dalton, it depends on who you want to believe. Some people say that he was fired from the role as James Bond because License to Kill was not a success at the box office. Some people say Timothy Dalton walked away from the role. Either way, he was not brought back for this film, and we've actually got Pierce Brosnan, who took up the mantle as James Bond. And again, Pierce Brosnan was actually meant to be James Bond for The Living Daylights. And there was just actually a recent interview where he was on a talk show, Pierce Brosnan, and he actually spoke about what happened back then. And if I can put the clip in, it will go in here.
And during those 60 days, I did the wardrobe fitting, I had the Living Daylights, the script right beside the bed.
Oh my God.
Day 59, all is good, we're okay. Cubby Broccoli, he said, look, you can have him for 6 episodes, but no more than 6 episodes. Day 59, day 60, we're in Malibu in the colony, phone rings, hello, hi. They wanted the option of 22.
Really?
Cubby said, that's it, all bets are off. And that was it.
Unbelievable.
Timothy Dalton was in the next week.
Pretty much, he went from 1987 to 1995, and he came back as James Bond. And in his first outing as James Bond, 007, Pierce does an absolutely spectacular job in the role. He is actually hands down, in this film here, and I'm only basing it on GoldenEye, he would have to be the best James Bond based on this movie alone. Because there's so many factors that go into making a good James Bond. Yes, Timothy Dalton is like my number one, because he sticks to this darker, more brutal take of James Bond, but he loses a little bit of that ladies' man quality that Roger Moore had. Now, when you look at Pierce in this film, Pierce Brosnan, or Pierce, when you look at him in this role, he has all the best qualities of Sean Connery, all the best qualities of Roger Moore, and all the best qualities of Timothy Dalton. He's wrapped it all up into one. And I know that with time, Pierce Brosnan has said that he wishes he could have made the role a little bit more unique to him rather than being kind of like a copy of others that had come before him. But that does not detract from the fact that we have got an absolutely phenomenal first outing as a James Bond for Pierce Brosnan. It is the best. This movie here is my number one James Bond movie of all time. So I'm going to let you know that straight up front. It is my number one James Bond movie of all time. And I think it's time we actually get into the film. Now, it does open with James Bond, and he's actually running. He's running along a dam with a bungee cord over his shoulder, and comes to the end of this dam, looks down at the ledge, and just jumps off, skydives straight down with a bungee cord, all the way down into like this weapons facility, this chemical weapons facility. And I remember now I'm going to say when I first watched it, but that would be at the cinemas. But when I watched it on VHS after playing the video game so many times, when I watched it at home on VHS for the first time, this scene alone blew me away. It was just absolutely spectacular that we just open up to this movie, massive wide angle. He just dives straight down. And the stuntmen, please just give them everything that they deserve, because without them, you would not have the stunts that we admire in these movies so much. But he just pulls out his like grappling gun, shoots it as he's dropping down. So he would shoot it down to make the rope taut so it doesn't actually fly all the way back up. Then uses the laser on the gun to cut a hole in there and then drops into the facility. And what I really like is the introduction we get to Pierce Brosnan, because we first see his eyes, which would pretty much just be where my glasses are now. You see that really super close up. And then the first proper introduction you get is one of the Soviet soldiers. He's just sitting on the toilet doing number 2, reading a newspaper, and he must hear a noise. And as he's got the newspaper up, he puts it down, and Pierce is just, or James Bond, I should say, he just drops down. He's facing this guy upside down, punches him and knocks him out, and that's the introduction you get. And then from there, you've got James Bond sneaking through the facility, making his way through, sees a whole bunch of guards, like Soviet military, kind of having their meal, or something, must be lunch break, having a meal. Then he meets up with Alec Trevelyan. 006 is played by Sean Bean, which is brilliant casting. So he meets up with Sean Bean. They go further down through the facility. Then they get to the these massive vats of chemicals. We don't know what the mission is. All we know is they've got to go in there. They've got a 6-minute timer on these little explosive bombs. They're going to blow up these chemical vats. So we have to imagine there's some sort of chemical weapons that they're making, because that's what the facility is. But we have to imagine that it's just destroy these chemicals and the facility and get out. And while they're doing that, Bond and Trevelyan are having like a little bit of a friendly exchange with each other. So you figure out that, yes, they are not only working together in MI6 as 00 agents, but they're actually outside of the missions. They must be good friends. And I love the banter between the two of them, like, shut the door after the, buy me a pint, things like this. They're having a bit of a joke, and then all of a sudden Trevelyan just goes dead quiet, no pun intended. Bond kind of pokes his head out as he set up these 6-minute timers, and you see a whole bunch of Soviet military guys there. And then you've got Oromov standing there with a pistol, with a gun, held at Trevelyan's head, and he goes, I'm going to count down to 10, come out, put your weapon down. To Bond, put your weapon down, come out, and in 10 seconds, I'm going to kill this guy if you don't come out. So Bond, runs back behind the vats, these big tall cylinders, clicks the timer from 6 minutes down to 3, puts his hands up, starts making his way out, and Trevelyan just says to him, pretty much don't worry, just do the mission. Oromov shoots him. Bond then runs back behind the vats, grabs his gun, and then gets this trolley cart, which has got these little, I imagine, explosive chemicals in these little canisters, gets it and then starts moving it as he walks toward a conveyor belt. And you've got this little squeaky wheel that's just That's just, it's like when you go shopping. And the director actually says in the audio commentary, the reason he put this squeaky wheel in there was because every time he goes shopping, he always gets a squeaky wheel and he hates it. So he wanted to put it in there. And I do actually remember when I was watching this at the cinemas, when that squeaky wheel was happening, I remember people laughing. And I know that that sounds trivial, but I just remember that because you've got this really serious opening. You've just watched 006 get shot and killed in front of Bond. And then this squeaky wheel's just like this as he moves from the side over to like this little conveyor belt. And that little bit of levity is perfect. It's needed in this moment. So anyway, Bond ends up escaping the facility on a little plane, which he jumps off the runway. He's on a motorbike. The plane goes over the edge with no pilot in it. This little like single engine plane goes over the edge. Bond jumps off on his motorbike down. He seems to be traveling faster than the plane. That's my only issue with this film. Gets inside the plane. At the last minute manages to fly up over the facility as the whole place just erupts. And then we go into the title song, which is GoldenEye by Tina Turner. And it is, wowee, it is fantastic. This is what I mean with this movie. We've got a brilliant opening. You've introduced Sean Bean as 006 and killed him. You've got Pierce Brosnan as 007. You've got this banging opening, massive explosion, killer, absolute killer title song, GoldenEye, which then shows the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall, the end of the Cold War pretty much. It shows all of that just with the way the actual song's playing out. You've got the Bond girls in there, the sexy women hammering down, breaking down walls, this and that. And then we jump forward 9 years. So we started off in, what would that be? That'd be 1986. The pre-title sequence begins. And then we jump forward 9 years. And we're now in Monte Carlo. James Bond is driving in his Aston Martin DB5. And he's driving in there with a woman named Caroline who's there to evaluate him. And as he's driving down the mountain and everything like that, this Ferrari comes up and he's like looking at the Ferrari, and it's this like flirting moment between Bond and Caroline, the evaluator. But then Bond sees this Ferrari, and the Ferrari is driven by Xenia Onatopp, who's played by Famke Janssen. And she comes up, and then there's like that flirting between Bond and Xenia Onatopp, and actually have a race down the mountain. And if you look behind me, when I first started doing these videos, you would have probably noticed that I've always got a Ferrari there and an Aston Martin there. Now, the reason I've got that is because of this film. Although that Ferrari is not the one that Xenia Onatopp drives, that's the Aston Martin that Pierce drives, and that is a Ferrari, so I put it there as a little bit of a homage to this film. So anyway, they have this little flirty moment as they're driving down, narrowly avoiding other vehicles. Then there's some cyclists, and then Bond ends up pulling the emergency brake, stops. Xenia drives off towards Monte Carlo, and Bond and Caroline, do the deed. And then you've got Bond arriving at the casino in Monte Carlo, and he pulls up in his Aston Martin, and the casino scene alone is probably one of, barring Sean Connery's casino introduction in Dr. No, this casino scene, up to this point, is probably the best casino scene in any Bond film. Bar none. Pierce's introduction at the casino, at the tables, Xenia Onatopp's there. Bond introduces himself to Xenia. They start playing against each other in cards. There's more of a flirty exchange. We've got three things in common. I only count two: motoring and baccarat. And then she's like, "I hope the 30s where your real talent lies." And Bond's, "One rises to meet a challenge." And it's completely full of innuendo. The sexual tension is there. They leave the table. He introduces himself as Bond, James Bond, which is chef's kiss the way Pierce does it.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
We find out Xenia's name, Xenia Onatopp, and then Bond's like, Onatopp. This entire scene is perfectly written, perfectly acted, perfectly scored by Eric Serra. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of his musical score in this movie. I happen to love it. I own the soundtrack. I love it. I don't care what anyone says. It fits this movie. It suits this more of a almost mid-90s industrial grunge feel to it. Yes, the music sounds exactly the same as Leon the Professional, which came a year before, which was also scored by Eric Serra. But I feel like it suits this movie perfectly. And actually, speaking of that, last night I went to dinner at my parents' house with my wife and my brothers and everyone was there. And my dad put on Leon the Professional. It was on Netflix. So they had that on a little bit. And I was just looking at the movie, and in the background, I was listening to the music, and I'm like, oh, this is so GoldenEye. Like, you can tell that it's the same guy. But it fits that movie, and it fits this movie. And a lot of people have faulted the musical score in this film for not using the Bond theme enough, which, look, I don't think we need the Bond theme every moment that Bond does something like they were doing in the Sean Connery movies. I do think we need the Bond theme in the movies. I just don't think we need it as often. And we do get it later on in the tank sequence, but it's scored by a different composer for that scene. So maybe that's why the Bond theme appeared at that point. But going back to it, the music in this movie is fantastic. I'm a big fan of the musical score in this film. It is one that when I was younger, I never really had a TV in my room when I was younger. I used to just have a CD player, and this movie soundtrack, the score, would always be playing in my room. Even when I went to bed at night, I would have it on repeat. The whole CD would just repeat. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I feel like this movie here has fantastic direction by Martin Campbell, who, this is his first Bond film. His second is Casino Royale. So you know the type of caliber we're talking about here. So you've got brilliant direction by Martin Campbell. You've got fantastic acting throughout the whole movie. There's not a single person in this movie that is badly acted. And you've got great action throughout this whole film. You've got, like I said, we're in Monte Carlo at the casino. Bond and Xenia, part. Xenia has an awkward... Well, it's only awkward because every time this scene comes on with Xenia and not the commander. He's not the commander. This one's an admiral. So the admiral... Every time she's in bed with this guy and she's, eventually strangling him because, she's one of the bad girls in this movie, and her method of killing people is that she strangles them with her thighs. And she really, really gets off on physical harm to herself and others, killing people, and, that's about it. I think she covers all of that spectrum. She's just a bad woman. Incredibly sexy woman. Famke Janssen is absolutely beautiful, and in this movie, she's perfect in this movie. But every single time that scene comes on, it is an extremely awkward moment if, say, someone just walks in. Because it's like, yes, I'm watching a Bond movie. This scene is just believe me, I'm watching a James Bond movie. I'm not watching anything that you wouldn't find on TV. So it's always a little bit awkward, but... she ends up killing this guy. Bond hears from MI6 that Xenia Onatopp is working with a group called Hiatus, and, he's told to keep an eye on her, but do not approach her, pretty much. And the following morning, Bond actually goes to her boat, like her little cruise boat. He goes on the boat, finds the Admiral dead, because she killed him the night before during sex. Finds out that the Tiger helicopter that they're going to be showing off on a boat not too far from where her boat was, the Tiger helicopter is there, puts one and two together and rushes to this demonstration for this Tiger helicopter. And the Tiger helicopter in this movie can survive EMP blasts. So it has use and it has a reason. So anyway, Bond goes there, rushes. Xenia manages to steal the helicopter, flies away, Bond's arrested. And then the next time we see Bond, he's at MI6 in London. He's there with the brand new M, as played by Judi Dench. And again, this is the same continuity as previous Bond films. So in this continuity, Pierce Brosnan was married to Tracy at one point. He's had all of those experiences that all the other Bonds have had. It's just, we're in the 90s now. Just deal with it, I guess. And it's the end of the Cold War. Is Bond still relevant? Yeah, he is still relevant. And this Judi Dench is a woman. This M is played by Judi Dench. So obviously, M is a woman. She's a hard ass. She puts Bond in his place many times. And I do enjoy the relationship that they have in this movie. When I watched it again recently, I said to my wife, hey, I think I'm going to put on GoldenEye in the theatre room tonight. And she's like, oh, okay. And we were having pizza, and I said to her, I'm just going to take the pizza in there like my slice. She goes, oh, I'll come in there and I'll watch it with you. And then after about 20 minutes, I'm going to get up and then go do some cross-stitching. My wife loves cross-stitching. She's got her own channel. Follow her if you haven't. And I said, yeah, that's no problems at all. So we're sitting down watching this movie, and I was pretty much saying about 80% of the lines from what I could remember. And 20 minutes passed, my wife was sitting down. Halfway through the movie, my wife is still sitting beside me watching it. The end of the movie comes, credits roll, my wife was still sitting beside me through the whole film. Didn't pull out her phone to do any research. She just sat there and watched the film, and I said to her, did you enjoy it? And she goes, yeah, I liked it. I've seen it before, but it was good to see it again. And watching it on the big screen again with the sound system on, and I'm hearing like gunshots in the back corners and the sound of the tank going through the streets of Russia, and you can hear the tire treads, well, not the tank treads ripping up the street. It felt like I'm watching this movie for the first time. And although we're in its 30th anniversary, GoldenEye is now 30 years old, 1995 to 2025 this year. It's 30 years old. This movie on screen still looks as good as I remember it being when I first watched it on VHS, only now I'm watching it in 4K. And I really struggle to pull up a fault with this film. Again, amazing. But the whole plot of this movie is that the organisation Janus is being run by Alec Trevelyan. Now, we believed Alec Trevelyan to be dead at the beginning of the movie. He wasn't. He was actually working with Oromov to, I guess, build up this company Janus, which is a two-faced Roman god, as they say later in the movie. And the moment that it's revealed that Alec Trevelyan, former MI6, former 00 agent, is Janus, it's a powerful scene when you watch Pierce Brosnan actually come to face with him, and their exchange is phenomenal. Now, I know that the trailers for this movie spoiled that reveal, but in 1995, if you saw Sean Bean in this movie and his name in the credits during the title or the title sequence, I think you must know that something's going on. You must know. It's like watching, a Law and Order and seeing a big name actors, as a special guest star. You know that they're part of the plot in some way, even if they haven't been revealed until halfway in the episode. And this is the same way. So for me going into this movie, I always knew that Alec Trevelyan was the bad guy. I just didn't know to what capacity. And the whole idea with Janus is that there are these space satellites, well, obviously, that are EMP weapons, and they can disrupt the EMP range for like 20 miles. The whole idea is Janus wants to steal money from London, hack into the computer systems, pretty much rob them, and then he's going to set off this EMP device to wipe out all the records in London. And like Bond says, you're pretty much just a thief. You're a petty crook. You've got this big organisation, all you're going to do is be a thief. Like, compared to other villains that are going to detonate weapons on the planet and live in space, creating a new civilization, or living under the, in the ocean and things like that, this guy is just going to steal money. And you've got, Oromov's working for him, Xenia Onatop's working for him. all these different characters. You've even got this character called Boris, as played by Alan Cumming. Boris he's a systems programmer. He works in Seven Eye, who are the people that are pretty much monitoring, creating. They're working with the satellites, the GoldenEye satellites. And Boris is introduced in this movie. He's like what people think neckbeards are online. He's like, I don't even know how to explain it. He's an absolute idiot. He's a fool. He's a pig. Like, you need an access code to go into the program, and he uses, like the words boobs or knockers or something like that. He does all these types of stupid things. He thinks he's the best. He hacks into like the CIA, FBI, things like that. This is the type of guy you're dealing with. And of course, he starts working, or he is working with Yanis also, that group. So when Orimov and Xenia arrive at Seven Eye to steal the GoldenEye satellite, there's two GoldenEye satellites. They used one to destroy Seven Eye, and this is the scene where we're introduced to Natalia Semyonova, who is played by, and I'm going to try and get this right, Isabella Scorupco, who is gorgeous. She's introduced in this scene. She's just like a level 2 programmer. Boris is like smarter than her. He's everything. He's the best. And Xenia shows up with Orimov here. They've used a helicopter that they've stolen. They arrive at Seven Eye. They take the weapons. Xenia goes with a machine gun, kills everyone, all these different programmers that are working here, kills them all. Natalia manages to survive. They detonate an EMP at the location, which destroys everything, including 3 fighter jets that are coming to check out what's going on. As the EMP goes off, you see the helicopter flying away, and it's not affected by the EMP. So that's the whole reason they stole the Tiger helicopter. And back at MI6, Bond is watching this entire thing live with satellites as they see everything get destroyed. The satellites get destroyed too because the blast has gone off. And it's Bond's mission now to figure out what's going on, who stole GoldenEye, who stole the helicopter, and figure out who Yanis is. And then he goes to Russia, starts meeting up with other people, and the whole movie is just Bond trying to figure out what's going on. And all the encounters he has with a whole bunch of these other characters. I mean, you've got Jack Wade, who's a CIA, which I guess is kind of like a replacement for Felix Leiter. And he's actually played by a returning actor, Joe Don Baker, who was in The Living Daylights. So it's actually weird, because if Pierce got the original James Bond role for The Living Daylights, he would have actually worked with Joe Don Baker a second time if he'd still filmed GoldenEye. So it's actually really interesting. But Joe Don Baker comes in here. He plays Jack Wade, CIA. And I love his role. And something I only noticed when I was watching it this time is that he's obsessed with gardening. And he always calls James Bond Jimmy or Jimbo or something of that form. But I actually love in this movie, because every single time we see Jack Wade, the very first time we meet him, he asks Bond if he likes gardening. The next time we see him, he's dropping off a whole bunch of Q devices for Bond and the aeroplane that Bond uses to find the final GoldenEye radar dish, the satellite area at the end of the film. When he's there, he mentions about some of the trees around the area. And then the very third time we see him, which is just before the end credits, when he picks up Bond and Natalia, he again mentions about the trees that are around the area. He says something, I cannot remember the exact what he says, but he just mentions it briefly, and I'm like, was this in here by special request from Joe Don Baker, or is this meant to be a character trait? It was just a tiny little thing that just gives him that little bit extra character that, to me, just puts him a little bit above Felix Leiter, because Felix in every other movie has just been random person, random actor, you're Felix Leiter. He's always there. He doesn't really do much. except for in License to Kill. Obviously, he's a big part of that whole revenge movie. But in this one here, I don't know, I just love Jack Wade. He's awesome in this film, and I'm glad that he returns in Tomorrow Never Dies, the next Bond film. And I wish he would have returned for more. But anyway, you've got him, you've got the other character. Who's the other one? It's Robbie Coltrane. He plays Valentin Sokovsky. And Bond has to go to Valentin to kind of set him up, to set up a meeting between Bond and Yanis. He's trying to find out anything. He just needs to Bond needs to get closer to Yanis. And from that point on, once Bond lands in Russia, he starts meeting all the characters. The plot starts moving along. He ends up getting knocked out when he meets Trevelyan again. He's tied down in the actual Tiger helicopter where the rockets fly off and their target is the Tiger helicopters. They fly off. Bond is in the cockpit at the front. Natalia is sitting behind him. Bond's trying to escape as the rockets are flying off, turn in midair and then coming back for that Tiger helicopter. He manages to eject the cockpit, which flies up. They're arrested, interrogated. Bond escapes when Orimov actually kills the defense minister. Bond escapes with Natalia. Then she gets captured. Orimov gets Natalia, drives through the Russian streets. Bond commandeers a tank, drives the tank through the streets, chasing this little car, and then he puts it on the train tracks when this train is heading toward it, which has got, pretty much the head honchos of Yanis, Like I said, you've got Alec Trevelyan, who's the leader. You've got Orimov. You've got Xenia Onatop. And in there also, they've got Natalia. So Bond puts the tank on the tracks, shoots at the train, derails the train, breaks into the train, and then eventually from there they find out where the actual next satellite is that Yanis has got. Go there, and then we're pretty much at the end of the film. Bond ends up defeating Yanis, defeats Alec, and it's just, from beginning to end, I cannot say anything about this film that hasn't been said by thousands of others online, but for me, it is just, this is the Bond film that got me into Bond in a big way, and it meant, just watching it with my wife meant so much to me. And I honestly, I'm 41 years old. I watched this sitting on the couch on our big screen with the sound system going. I felt like I was 10 years old watching it. It was fantastic. And that is how I feel watching this movie. It takes me back. I know nostalgia is a big thing, but it doesn't detract from this movie being A++. This is, if I had to give a rating, this is like an 11 out of 10.
These go to 11.
This is an 11 out of 10, this movie. It is phenomenal. I really cannot put a fault to this movie. Everything about it, Pierce makes for such a fantastic Bond, and I'm so grateful that he got the opportunity to be Bond after losing out to Timothy Dalton because of the whole Remington Steele situation. So I'm so grateful that he came into this film, and it's just brilliant. Look, it may not be for everyone. Some people aren't massive fans of Pierce Brosnan, and I can understand that because he doesn't really feel like a unique Bond. He feels like a mix of all those that came before him, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I feel like we've gotten the perfect elements of every previous Bond mixed, and we've got Pierce, and he is one of the best. He's one of the best, and he is the current generation's Bond. Like, people my age, he's their James Bond. So, well done, everyone involved in this movie. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so happy that this film gets always the love it deserves. And you see it. I mean, if you check up anyone's favourite Bond films, in the top 5, GoldenEye is usually there. And it shows. You watch this movie from beginning to end, brilliant action, brilliant women, beautiful women. The only real thing it misses out on is like a vehicle sequence with Bond in his BMW, because he does have a vehicle when he goes to Q Branch and he meets up with Q, as played by Desmond Llewellyn, who is still here. And he does get the car explained to him, the BMW Z3. It's a roadster. It is beautiful. It's got, Stinger missiles behind the headlights. It's got all these features that he starts talking to Bond about, but it's never used in the movie. And the reason is because the deal with BMW came really late in production, that they actually couldn't film a sequence for it in this film. So the only time you really see it is when Bond and Natalia are just kind of like, they're in Puerto Rico, I think it is, and they're just driving, and it's a really beautiful sunny day, and they're driving through the area, and then all of a sudden a plane comes down in front of them, and it's Jack Wade, and that's the end of the car. Now, we're going to get into the kill count. We're going to get into all that information now. And look, this movie here, you can obviously see there's a lot more action in this film. Bond's going around with machine guns all the time, but we're going to get into the kill count now. And these are only confirmed kills, because if you really take into account the Archangel Weapons Chemical Facility at the beginning of the movie, I'm sure when that place blew up, Bond would have taken out maybe 200 people just inside there. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about confirmed kills, ones that we can count on screen. And on screen, I counted 25 total. We have 20 Russian soldiers, General Oromov, he does kill him, a helicopter pilot, Xenia Onatop, and 2 Yanis guards. So he does not kill Alec Trevelyan. I don't care what anyone says. Alec Trevelyan is hanging. The satellite dish in this movie is fantastic, because it doesn't rise out of the water per se. It is the base of like this river, and the water from the river is covering the main dish. And it sinks down, the water just disappears, sinks into a gap of some kind, we don't know what, in the center of this dish. Out rises just the center part of the satellite that rises up. And Bond and Trevelyan are fighting because Bond has to, he's got to stop the communication from the base to the GoldenEye satellite that is making its way over London so it can detonate and they can steal everything. And even though Natalia has set the retro rockets for re-entry so the satellite will burn up, Boris is there, like crazy trying to stop it and crack the code. But Bond is going into the center of the dish up top to put like a metal rod through it so that it will just jam up and not be able to do anything. And during the fight with Alec Trevelyan, which is really intense with no music, they end up falling through the floor down this ladder to the very bottom, which is hanging, like 100, maybe about 100 meters from the bottom of the dish. They're hanging up top. And, Bond's holding Trevelyan by the leg as he's dangling down, and Trevelyan says to him, I cannot remember what he says, but Bond goes, "No, for me," and he lets him go, and you see Trevelyan fall. And you would think, he's killed him. No. Because when you next see Trevelyan, he's laying on the ground, looking up at the dish, kind of the array above him. He's looking at it, so he is alive, and then the dish crumbles, breaks, and falls on top of him as Boris is inside screaming, and the whole place just starts blowing up. So he didn't kill Alec Trevelyan. That much we can say. So, anyway, we've done the kill count, 25. Now for the locations visited, we've got 6. We've got USSR, which is Russia, Soviet Union area, and that's the Archangel Chemical Weapons Facility at the beginning of the film. Then we have Monte Carlo in Monaco, London, England, just for a brief bit. We've got St. Petersburg in Russia. We have Puerto Rico, where we see the BMW driving with Bond and Natalia. And we've got Cuba, which is the final area where the satellite dish is. And for women bedded, we have Caroline and Natalia Semyonova. And Caroline was the evaluator who was sent by M to evaluate Bond. And I guess his psychological state. It's kind of implied that she's there to evaluate him because of the incident at the beginning of the film with 006. But I think it's more maybe just because that's 9 years past. So I don't think she'd be evaluating him for 9 years or after 9 years. I think it's more just a general, hey, every year you need an evaluation to make sure that you're still right. And I haven't spoken much about Natalia, but she was the crush of many men, I am sure, and me also. And she's beautiful, and if you still look up this woman, Isabella Scorupco, she is still as beautiful as she was 30 years ago, and I'm sure she will continue to look beautiful in another 10 to 15 years, because I don't know what deal she's done, but she looks phenomenal. Now, that is the end of this review. I do not know if I've done this movie justice. I don't think I have, but it is my review, and I am happy with it, I guess. Like I said, GoldenEye, I could watch this every day for the rest of my life, and I've pretty much watched it every single day of this month, of this past month, and yeah, it's just wonderful. Brilliant. Love this movie. Will always love this movie. It is always my number one Bond film of all time, and it will continue to be my number one Bond film of all time. But the next film I am going to be reviewing will be Tomorrow Never Dies, which is Pierce Brosnan, again as James Bond, coming back for his second entry in the film saga. And I am looking forward to revisiting that, because it's not one of the Bond films that I go back to as often as the others, just on a single by single film basis. But I do have it on VHS back here in my little collection back there. I do have it. And yes, I do. I did enjoy it in the past. So let's see if I feel the same way in my next review. But until that time, I hope that everyone is taking care of themselves. Let me know in the comments how you're going. And if you've got any questions or thoughts on this video, let me know below. But until I see you next time, keep punching forward, keep moving, and take care of yourselves. I will return.